Marcelo is currently a lecturer in education at the University of Sussex, where he co-leads the BA in Primary and Early Years Education with QTS course. Marcelo is the creator and author of The Joy of Not Knowing, published by Routledge in 2021. Marcelo is a former scientist and primary school head teacher. He uses the principles and philosophies that underpin the Joy of Not Knowing approach to education and leadership to speak at national and international conferences and to work as a consultant in partnership with schools and policymaking organizations, most recently helping to establish a reformed curriculum in Uzbekistan. Marcelo is also the chair of the Michael Ulrich Foundation, a charity that works towards promoting the arts in schools. Marcelo is a founder fellow of the Chartered College of Teaching, a fellow of the Higher Education Association, and a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Education. Marcelo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharmila, and thank you so much to everyone that has already contributed to this morning in what is, as always, one of the very, very most special highlights of my year. This is my 5th year collaborating with the Global Empathy Conference, and there's nothing that I enjoy more than being part of such an inspirational initiative that is truly, truly global. To see the audience today, to see the participants that have joined us today, it's just incredible. And I want to send out a very, very, very special warm welcome, particularly to my colleagues who are joining us from Uzbekistan, where I have just been and met so many of them, but also colleagues from all over the world. And I would like to also extend a huge, huge sense of gratitude, enormous gratitude for all the people that have been involved in the creation of today, that have made today happen. There is so much that is done during the year to ensure that a day like this can be enjoyed by so many. Mohita, just incredible what you've done. Paramita, Keenan, Sharmila, Rajastri, the whole team is such a pleasure to be part of and to be involved with you all. So thank you so much. And as we have just heard, there is nothing more important, I believe, than focusing on the power of empathy for me in its impact in being able to create a better world for us all. So I'm incredibly honored to be here. I'm incredibly honored to be in Prague for the first time ever in my life, and very, very special to be at St. Charles University, which has seen as so much meaning for us all. I'm also incredibly excited by the program of today, and it's a real great honor and privilege to be launching the program, which is so incredibly exciting. And I'm very grateful, very, very grateful to all my colleagues at the University of Sussex, to Robin Banerjee and Claire Watts, who are going to lead sessions following this one, and particularly to the students who have created something so incredibly special with the students from the University of California, Santa Cruz, Silicon Valley Extension, and Shamila and I are just beyond, we just haven't got enough words to describe what it was like to bring students from 2 university institutions together from across the world to talk about the value and power and impact of empathy. So huge, huge thanks to everyone, and I really hope that you enjoy the day enormously. And it gives me great, great honor for me an enormous pleasure for me to launch the conference by paying tribute to one of the most special people that I have known in my life. My talk, my presentation is a tribute to the most wonderful person, John Westburnham, who unfortunately died in December 2022. And this is a way of honoring his work, of keeping the legacy that he established in terms of the impact and importance of empathy in our world and in education alive. And I really look forward to sharing with you in the next 10 or 15 minutes, the impact that John had on me personally, and the impact that through his value of empathy that he had with my personal and professional life, and how he enabled through our very first meeting over 25 years ago, enabled and shaped every single aspect of my being, and also what has now become known as the joy of not knowing philosophy of education and leadership. And you can see there on the first slide, that's the amazing, wonderful John. And there was no greater accolade, satisfaction for me in my entire life than when I was writing the book and it was about to be published. I wanted somebody to write the preface to it. And when I asked John and he agreed, it was such a wonderful moment in my life. But then reading what he actually said about the book, if you read the preface, which I hope you will in time when you receive the presentation, it is so full of the way that he related to others. It is so full of the way that he admired what others can bring to the world, and in particular, the way that his empathy in terms of seeing the value of what I was trying to portray through the book. His words are so incredibly special. So if we move to the next slide, I met John for the very first time, completely by chance, on both speaking at a conference in Worthing for the deputy heads of Southeast England. We just sat down over a coffee. He was presenting first and I was presenting. And it was just that immediate link and contact on a very personal and humane level that connected us from that moment onwards, and for until now, throughout my life. He's been so compassionate. It was his ability to listen, to see the goodness and the positiveness in society and in community and in relationships, was totally unique. His way of making you feel positive, to make you, the way that he made you feel that anything and everything was possible, to the way that he made you feel that together we can all work towards achieving a better world, was just absolutely incredible. And his wisdom in the way that he expressed how to then enact that vision that we all have for a better world is just something that will stay with me forever, and that I have inside me with everything I do. He placed so much emphasis on the importance of education and friendships to develop what he called, and this is part of the preface in the book, what he called adding cultural capital to society. That is a phrase that drives absolutely everything I do, and it's a phrase that the students at the University of Sussex have become very, very familiar with. The purpose of education, if we think about the purpose of education, is to create individuals who are able to function in society and to use their wisdom to develop cultural capital for the good of society and the world. Then it's just that's for me the definition of functioning within an empathetic culture. He was extremely knowledgeable about and introduced me to the idea of personalization of learning. And I think if we think about the power of empathy in education, that sense that if the teacher having that sense of real expert knowledge of every child within their setting, within their learning environment, and trying to personalize through the provision of the teaching and learning process, personalize the learning to every individual, so that every individual feels that the learning is meaningful for them. It's just such a special way of viewing the process of the teaching and learning process. He introduced me to the concept of inquiry-based learning, which is now the absolute main principle that drives the joy of not knowing approach. And he was amazing. If you are able to look up his work and still benefit from everything that he did and contributed and wrote, and courses that he led in terms of system leadership based on empathy, on an empathetic approach with each other, is just incredible, and something that I used very, very much when I became a head teacher and leader of primary schools in England. And then the last few things are things that he wrote, rethinking the curriculum. He had such a vision for always trying to improve how we use education to create a better world. And his words and his wisdom in all of his writing are so incredibly special. And as we'll see today, the presentation will move us from the concept that John introduced me to, and that was going to be the last conversation I had with John. He said, "Marcelo, I have one more book in me, and I would love to write it together." And and we were going to call it From Knowledge to Understanding to Wisdom. We have all the kind of setup already done, so maybe one day this will come true in honor of John. But the concept, which is something that's so deeply ingrained in me now, it's the thought that knowledge is not enough. John always used to say that, particularly in the society that we're growing up in now and developing, knowledge is not enough. Knowledge is just the beginning of the process of the value of education, and that means that once we've acquired the knowledge, it's really important to develop a thorough understanding, and then really wonderfully to develop the wisdom with which to use that knowledge for the good of society. So all in all, just incredibly special. I just want to take you through and give you some examples with the next slide of how someone can influence someone's life and career so deeply as to create such a transformational impact on absolutely everything I do, I am, and I feel. And I just wanted to say that through John's work, I developed the philosophy that's now known as the joy of not knowing, which is also kind of has a lot of foundations as well on this lovely statement from Albert Einstein, who once said that he never taught his students, he just provided the conditions in which they can learn. And I think that there is so much empathy in this statement as well, because in providing the conditions in which students can learn, you are constantly thinking of the needs of the community of learners that are with you. And if we go to the next slide, what I have done, and John was so instrumental in all of this, is that to think that maybe Einstein didn't go far enough, and we need an Einstein plus Marcelo little extension, in that it's not enough to provide the conditions in which students are able to learn, but we also need to provide the conditions in which they will want to learn. And I think empathy is the vehicle for which that can happen, because if the teacher can provide conditions in which students feel intrinsically motivated to engage, then there's that. Then that is due to having created that human connection, human relationship, which is so much more than the traditional thinking of education of filling an empty vessel with knowledge. So my whole career, no, my whole view, my whole focus on the value of education is to create conditions in which children, students will develop intrinsic motivation to want to engage. And I feel that happens when the students, the children feel that they have everything they need to be able to succeed. And what John and many others, but particularly John, through all our conversations, made it so clear is that those needs are so varied, from the emotional to the social to the cognitive, the academic, and the cultural, the linguistic. You know, it's just that looking and thinking of everything that a person needs to be able to thrive. And that's, I guess, is the value of empathy. And if we go to the next slide, I then thought of I think all this is so incredibly important that when chatting with John, we suddenly realized that in education we tend to assume that all these things will happen as a result of the teaching and learning process. But we came up with the idea that it would probably be much better to actually teach these things specifically alongside the teaching of the knowledge, and to actually realize that unless we have this culture that enables everyone to thrive before the learning is presented, then the outcomes that we wish to obtain with the learning process isn't as secure as it could be. So I developed the idea of which is a little provocation for all of you and within all your contexts globally, of launching the academic year with a Learning to Learn week, in which the students are all given and presented with and taught all the skills and strategies and dispositions that will enable them to thrive as effective learners. But most importantly, that week is used to create an empathetic, rich culture of learning in the classroom, based on values, based on children's rights, based on the Sustainable Development Goals, based on mutual respect and all sorts of things. So creating that space at the beginning before the learning is presented, I think, is one of the main ideas that I wanted to share with you today, and that drives the whole principle of the joy of not knowing. And as you can see there, each day is given to certain different aspects that when are then placed together, make every student feel that they're able to succeed. And that's a really important discussion that we always have with John. It's not that we're guaranteeing that they can succeed, but there's the sense that they can feel that they're able to have a go and they're able to succeed. is the important factor in all of this. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you how then this became part of the culture and part of the DNA of both of the schools where I was a head teacher at. And you can see that they both launch with, before the learning is presented, they both rely on the establishment of the values and children's rights and lifelong learning, dispositions, rich culture, which then, as you can see towards the end of the wheel on the left, then enable education to produce and to create individuals who are able to contribute positively to society. So that sense, keeping that sense of the value and vision of education at all times to drive system leadership is incredibly exciting. And I'll just give you a few examples before I finish of how all this vision can become embedded in practice. And the next slide shows that in order for everyone to feel that they are valued and that they have a sense of ownership and co-construction of the learning of the learning environment and how the learning is shaped at all times, I developed the idea of which again is a little provocation for everyone in the audience, of enabling the children, the students, to engage with the learning and the curriculum in using all the richness of language that they have, not just the language of instruction. And that is, again, rooted on an empathetic vision of every child and valuing that every child, every student has a huge amount of cultural and linguistic richness, which can be used, which we should be enabled when they access a curriculum rather than just restricting them to the language of instruction. And as it says, that wonderful quote from Nelson Mandela, that if you focus on the language of instruction only, you just reach people's minds. But if you also engage them with their own language, then that reaches their heart. So that's a really wonderful process. And then very quickly, I just want to show you how the empathetic view of learning, and particularly the what drives the jar of not knowing philosophy, is in the next slide, where we see that we all start at the question mark, which anything that we have to do in life. And if we know the answer, we can jump to 3. But if we don't know the answer, then we go into 2, and then do all our working out and come out into 3. But the next slide shows that the process is quite a complex process in the teaching and learning setup that's set up for the students with this view in mind. In order to feel that one can succeed in 3, the student has to go to 2, and that's the empathy path, where the student will want to go from 1 to 2 and launch into the learning because they feel intrinsically motivated to want to engage, and in 3 they feel they have everything they need to be able to thrive. And you can see also that 5 is when they've acquired the knowledge, and the idea is that if you do jump across, and because you've known the answer, you haven't learned anything new. So the only way to learn something new is to go through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 process, to go into the pit, and to realize that in order to learn anything new, you have to not know it first. So that sense of empathy when you're at 1 in the question mark is the sense that we need to make sure that every child feels that they have that freedom to not know, and that excitement of not knowing is what leads to enthusiasm to want to learn. So you can see 5 then has 6 next to it, and that's the impact that John's had on my life, where 5 is knowledge, but 6 is the movement from knowledge to understanding to wisdom, from 5 to 6. and that sense of greater curiosity that we all gain through having achieved more knowledge. So the next one shows you the wonderful system in action with how one can have, as we heard today, if one can have an influence on children right from the beginning of their lives in education and of their lives as soon as they're born, then we are working towards creating a better world. And I just want to leave you now with a couple of very important messages. And if just to summarize how centrally empathy is for me in terms of the educational process, is another little provocation that I believe that the key to all success in education and success of a learner is based on how the student feels that the teacher feels about them. And that's, I just thought it'd be a really lovely thing for you to consider, and that sense of empathy in terms of how we as learners feel that the teacher feels about us. And I feel that when that connection is a positive one, then anything and everything becomes possible, even in the greatest of challenges. I think that's a really, really wonderful way to sum up the principles and visions that we have presented. And then just very quickly, the next couple of slides is also the importance of involving the families, and then the next one of very empathetically the children creating their own models of learning so that they can express, every child expresses how they view learning themselves. And then in the next one, this is all part of the Learning to Learn move, where they describe through a mind map, they describe their whole lives. So you can see how when we're thinking about how a student feels that a teacher feels about them, when all this is constructed, the student feels that the teacher has all the knowledge of them as individuals and as learners. And then the next slide gives you a really wonderful idea, which I think is also at the heart of empathy, and one that maybe you could also see how it works in your context. And that is the process of presenting the learning through a learning objective that is a question, a philosophical question that that leads to discussion in the classroom and in the learning setting before the learning is then presented. And that allows you to shape the learning in a way that is personalized to the cohort rather than just read out of a lesson plan. So those are really, really lovely ideas. And then what we end up with in the next slide is students who are full of the skills of effective lifelong learners. So on the right-hand side of those concept lines, you can see that through this approach, children not only develop the knowledge, but they acquire all the skills of effective lifelong learning, which will make them succeed and contribute to life now and in their futures and to society. So it all links incredibly nicely. And then just to finish off with my two favorite things in the world, which are, as always, quotes from students. Monica said that year 5 was very special for her. Before I came into year 5, I thought that learning was all about intelligence, but now I know it's about a love of learning, creativity, happiness, and effort. And you just cannot ask for a better description of what one wants to achieve as a teacher, as an educator. And the second one, the one at the end, is a child in Spain who has interpreted the model of the joy of not knowing and has drawn himself with a friend inside the pit, saying, "No lo sé, I don't know," and has called it the pit of happiness instead of the learning pit. And I just think when one can achieve the conditions that rooted on empathy, that enable children, as we can see in both of these examples, to equate learning with happiness, but also with effort, is just the most special thing that we can achieve. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this little presentation, and you got a sense of the honor that I feel in terms of dedicating this to the life and work of John West Burnham. And I really encourage you to look into his work and to be inspired as we keep his legacy going. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Marcelo. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for sharing the essence of your book that I am enjoying going through right now as we speak, and sharing all of the joy of the students who benefited from your framework. Thank you so much.